Whether you're expecting your first, second, or even third child, this episode is here to support you on your breastfeeding journey, especially as you navigate the transition back to work. It's never too early to start planning, and today we're sharing practical tips and strategies to help you tackle common challenges and set yourself up for breastfeeding success. Let's dive in. Thanks for joining us. This is Preggy Pals.
Is that a plus sign?
Pink or blue? Hospital or home birth?
What type of food should I be eating?
I think I just peed myself. I'm pregnant and I have to exercise.
What pregnancy glow?
Wait, was that a contraction?
Gotta make these pants fit. I've got kinkles.
What do you mean there's more than one?
You've got the symptoms, and now you've got the support you need for a happy 9 months. This is Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
Welcome to Preggy Pals. I'm Emily Mason, your host for today's episode. Before we dive in, make sure to check out our website at newmommymedia.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter to stay updated on all our latest episodes. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button in your podcast app so you never miss an episode. If you're looking for even more ways to connect, join our online community, Mighty Moms. It's a great place to continue the conversation from the show, share insights, and even find out how to join us live for future recordings. Let's get started. Our expert today is Guyana Aramian. Guyana has always had a desire to understand people, their motives, and what drives them to make the decisions that they do. She is passionate about working collaboratively with clients to connect the dots from past and present for a more hopeful future. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please tell listeners where you're located and the age of your kiddo?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My son is 4.5 years old. He's a pandemic baby, and I am in Sherman Oaks, California.
Awesome. We have a ton of questions lined up today for Guyana, but first, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll jump right into it. All right, welcome back. Today, we're diving in to getting into the right mindset before you welcome your new bundle of joy. We have Guyana here with us. And Guyana, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I see clients virtually across California as well as in person in Sherman Oaks. And I offer coaching services if you are outside of California. I specialize in perinatal mental health and couples therapy. And I started specializing in the perinatal world 4.5 years ago, which is when I had my son. And I just, even though I was a therapist, I just had no idea about the postpartum period. And so once I did my own healing, went through my own journey, I got trained specifically in perinatal mental health so I can help moms through this journey of motherhood.
That is awesome and so interesting to think through. And you mentioned with your son, what did that pandemic baby? Also, I have a pandemic baby, so I'm right there with you. What did that journey look like for you with your first pregnancy and especially the postpartum period during the pandemic?
It was rough. I mean, I got pregnant end of 2019. We actually found out on Thanksgiving Day. And, it was really special. We had planned for this pregnancy and we wanted this. And one of the first hurdles I went through was about 8 to 9 weeks in. I started feeling depressed. I remember just being so confused. I called my mom and my mom was confused and she said, you should be happy and this is everything you wanted and you're in a great marriage and, all the things a mom would say, trying to make me feel better. But I remember hearing that and then internally it wasn't connecting. I was like, yes, I logically agree with you, but something is happening underneath all of that I'm not sure what it is. And so I told my OBGYN and, she normalized that this is part of the hormonal fluctuations. At the time, she recommended I take fish oil by the spoon, like a liquid version. for a few days and that was going to help. And it did help. If you're listening to this, always consult your doctor before trying something like that. I remember she told me to stop taking it at some point because it's a blood thinner. So don't just take my word for it. Really check in with your doctor and then try it if you get the okay. But that helped. And so then, everything was okay. And then March, the pandemic happened. And I remember crying a lot. I remember feeling scared a lot, of course, getting scared of getting sick. Being scared of. I remember there was a period where they said, your partner can be in the room with you.
Right.
And when you give birth. And so I cried a lot about that. I was terrified. And just, it's almost like you could have, I think people are always afraid of pregnancy because they don't want to add stress to the baby. They want to make sure everything is zen and chill and cool. And everything was set out to be that way for me, meaning my husband and I were in the best place we've been. Everything else was great. And then boom, life was happening, right? And this external force was causing a lot of stress for me. And so thankfully, by the time I had my son in July of 2020. By that time, they let partners in. And so my husband was able to be a part of it, although we still didn't know. Like when we were going to triage, they were still saying he might not be able to be a part of triage. So just a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. And that was pregnancy.
Yeah. So I was on the backside I found out I was pregnant in December of 2020. And so I had already come to terms with some of that isolation piece of I don't know what's going to happen. But I remember all of those feelings and just being able to connect because, we were still in lockdown. I was a teacher at the time. I couldn't go and see, I wasn't in a classroom. And so I was getting my information online from other moms, and that's where I was connecting with moms. So I think that really leans into my next question of I was hearing so many things from moms, and I kind of wonder, what did you hear during that time? And what are you hearing now from those pregnant moms of their postpartum experience, either during that time when you were also going through it or and even through now? What are they feeling, saying?
Well, I think postpartum and pandemic, had its own hardships because I remember that of course, you couldn't go out. There was no mommy and me groups. I think the first mommy and me group I did was when my son was maybe 9 months old. It was at a park, and it was just life was different, right? And I think that added a lot to new moms' anxieties and things they were feeling. I didn't get to take my son to a grocery store for a really long time. Of course, I was blessed to have help. Our moms helped out. So I was able to, if my husband had to work, I was able to leave him and then go to a store. But I wasn't used to taking him places because of the pandemic. And so I think it definitely added a layer of anxiety. Nowadays, of course, things are different, but I think that fear almost stayed with people, and that anxiety almost lingered and, is really much present with new moms now. And I see that in my practice. One of the main things that new moms are struggling with nowadays is the overload of information. And it's just so interesting to witness, 4 years ago versus now, it's even more information. I feel like 4 years ago, TikTok was a thing, but it wasn't the thing that it is now. I think that there's even with the fires in LA that were happening, the tragedy that was going on, I think it's so interesting how people were, of course, filming, putting it out on TikTok and Instagram. And it's now we get to experience people's traumas almost secondhand, which wasn't the case. Again, 4 years ago, it was out there, but it's even more out there now. So new moms are experiencing a lot of anxiety, the sleep schedules, the feeding, the comparison. There's a lot more that moms are struggling now. And I think, unfortunately, unless we get a better grasp at it, We learn some tools. We prepare better, which is where my passion is at, preparing for postpartum. It's only going to get worse.
And I think you are spot on with the comparison part. And 4 years ago, I mean, I was on Facebook and I was having to join the groups and say like, I want to be a part of September moms, like, and I had to, request to join and tell them when my due date was. And now I scroll through TikTok and it's almost like the perfectionist piece where I'm looking at these like moms that have 6 kids and they're like, pack a lunch for me, 4:30 a.m. I'm up and I'm just like, I'm supposed to be up at 4:30 a.m. like packing it, and it's not real life. But I don't get to choose. It's like the algorithm chooses for me and it's in my face. And I think that's the big difference, is that we're not always getting to choose the content that we're being inundated with. And that makes it a little more difficult.
Even, the Facebook group that I was in, it was originally created by this influencer who was due at the same time. And I remember there was maybe like 200 moms, and now the group is filled with like maybe 6,000 moms. And that was such a big resource for me. I wasn't going to TikTok and watching, 500 different videos. I was just in this intimate group, and people were so kind and they were answering. And now it's just different. There's a lot of anonymous posts, a lot of judgment, comparison. And yeah, it's just gotten a little bit harder for new moms to have a safe space where they can learn information, share stories, and be able to connect with others.
And I think that plays into a lot of like the stress piece. And we tell new moms not to stress during their pregnancy, but that's easier said than done. How can we help new moms not stress during their pregnancy? Are there tips and tricks that you have?
Yeah. So, I think one is coming to an acceptance that some things are going to be out of your control. And that's the piece that I was personally missing in my journey. I thought that, okay, everything's under control. Everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to stress this baby out. I'm not going to stress out. But then life was happening externally. And to have the acceptance that I can only control things that are in my life, certain things, right? I can also control how I react to stressful situations. And that's the piece that's important for, even if before you get pregnant, before you conceive, to think about tools to manage your stress, whether you get into meditating, whether you get into, yoga or journaling. Those are just some easy tools that someone can use when they're feeling stressed. And the other part is not stressing out about stressing out, if that makes sense. Like, you're human, you're going to cry. You're going to, if something is happening and it stresses you out, sometimes you are going to get stressed out. Now I can go back and, feel guilty about the stress I caused my baby during pregnancy. Or I can say, you know what, that was a really scary time. And I did my best to manage it the way I knew how to. And the rest was just me being a human being.
Absolutely. And for me personally, when somebody will say, you shouldn't stress, you shouldn't overload yourself. Remember, you have a baby and you're growing another human. That stressed me out more because I just wanted to do my normal everyday, like my stuff. I just wanted to continue feeling like me. And I almost caused myself more stress worrying about if I was doing and not enough or enough, and am I doing too much? Am I not doing it? And I realized pretty early on, like, I know me best, and my husband, my support person, also knew me best. And so that's really somebody I turn to. And so how important is having that support around a new mom, around a pregnant person, whether that's a family support or a partner support? How can they assist the mom in these transitional periods?
I think the support is crucial. We know that having a supportive partner or having a village decreases the chances of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety happening. It doesn't prevent it, but it decreases the chance, and even if
Mm-hmm.
someone is going through it, having that support can have a huge impact on how you get through it. And so, sometimes the work that I do with moms who are getting pregnant and going through the journey is we'll talk about, what are your needs? What fills your cup? What makes you happy? What do you enjoy doing? Let's write it down somewhere, because there's going to come a time where you don't recall and don't have any memory of what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you to go back to this page and to reflect on it and to see what you can implement. The other part is a lot of moms or new moms, expecting moms, they have trouble asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Asking for help for some reason in today's society is deemed as weakness. It's deemed as, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not doing enough. And I want to break that cycle. I want to break that message. I want to change it up, because I think that no one can do it all. I think we had villages helping us out, literally, like people lived in villages and they had
Mm-hmm.
a person for everything. And now, first of all, we rely on our husbands to be that everything. Which is just impossible. And then we also expect ourselves to do everything, which is also just sets you up for failure. I'm very big about thinking of this as like wearing different hats, right? So, for example, today is a day that I typically work late, and I'm wearing my therapist hat. And then I get to go home. I see my son for about an hour. My husband typically has his boys' nights on these days. And so technically, I'm not wearing my wife hat today. I'm wearing my therapist hat, my mom hat, and then maybe I'll do some self-care in the evening. So today, I'm not putting any effort into my marriage. Maybe I'll check in with my husband throughout the day, right? But I'm not really filling that bucket up. And then maybe tomorrow we get to spend some time together and I get to wear my wife hat. Or tomorrow I'm actually not working, so I'm not going to be wearing my therapist hat. And I like to think of my days that way, because it takes the pressure off being everything in one day.
Mm-hmm. I talk about that a lot too on my drive home. I have about an hour commute home, and people will say, "Don't you just like hate that drive?" And I have to tell and explain to people that hour is I can take my work hat off and I can put my Emily hat on for a little bit and like listen to my podcasts and listen to my books and get all of my brain ready to put my mom hat on and be fully engaged with my kids at home in the hour and a half that I get to see them at the end of the night before bed. And I think that's the piece that we don't put our phones down, or we don't have the time to disconnect from work and switch those hats. And so we just keep putting hats on top of hats on top of hats, and then we get burnt out.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that reframe. I think, and I commute a lot as well with my son's school. It's 30 minutes away. My work is 30 minutes away. I drive like 2 to 3 hours a day. And again, it's the reframe of, okay, well, I can either hate traffic and be miserable about it, or I can put on an audiobook or a podcast and fulfill something in me that I'm craving, which is like learning something, right? Or advancing my career, or just listening something. Today I was listening to Khloe Kardashian and what's his name, Scott Disick, on her new podcast, and it was not in any way informative. But I was like, you know what? I just want to listen to like some nonsense today, and that's okay. They were just
absolutely, and I think that's the like giving yourself that time. I don't know how many moms I've sat with, and I'm like, what do you want to do right now? And they were like, this is so embarrassing, but I want to put on like Jersey Shore or The Hills or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. Why is that embarrassing? Like what's embarrassing about that? Yeah. And I'm like, I watched that, and they're like, you do? And I'm like, I watch it to give my brain a break. I don't have to think about what the whole process is. I can just watch, and my brain has time to just not. Like, I'm just enjoying it. I don't have to think. I don't have to follow a script or a storyline, and that's the piece, like giving yourself that time and having, like you said, that family and partner support. To when my husband starts to see me spin, he's like, go read your book for a half an hour, go. And he prompts me to go do that. And I think that's important to have those people in your life.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, and part of the prep work I do with pregnant moms, or if I get to see a couple when they're expecting, my favorite is when I get to work with someone pre-pregnancy, because we really can get into, because when they're pregnant, we can prepare, but we can't do a lot of stressful work, like getting, you know, into trauma or past issues they've had, because it is a little bit stressful for them. So I love when I work with couples that, you know, are in the process of conceiving, and we can really get into repairing some of those old things that get them stuck in the relationship. And then when they're pregnant, we start talking about, okay, how are you going to deal with burnout? How are you going to deal with, you know, these stressful situations? And we come up with plans, and really, you know, having a partner who is supportive, who will have your back. You know, if you decide to breastfeed, I think having a partner be present in that journey is so important. I remember, you know, with my lactation consultant, when she did the original like prep session, she had, you know, she said, make sure your husband's there. And I remember initially thinking, how is he going to help in this? Like, it's me going to be breastfeeding, you know, like, how is he? And she was so, she made him feel so included. And she talked about, you know, at night, whenever it's time to feed the baby, you can bring the baby to her. You can change the diaper. You can put baby back to sleep. So then her only job is to feed the baby. And that's a huge job, obviously, right? So again, and I remember how helpful that really was for me, because it felt like I couldn't do it alone. So I think it's crucial to have that support.
Absolutely. And I love that we have, I mean, we've connected on watching these amazing shows, but also like learning and hearing that we're not alone in this journey, and we have these great partners that are supporting you and I, and these moms that are listening to this, like how they can start to establish these things, but also reach out to someone like yourself, or someone in their community to help with their partners and their journeys. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're really going to talk about you, and your journey and what that looked like for your postpartum. All right, welcome back. We are here with Guyana, and Guyana has been filling us in on all the amazing tips and tricks that she experienced very early on, from the beginning of her pregnancy, and how her partner and her family has been a great support system. I now want to transition and look a little bit more into what your postpartum was like after your baby was born, and how you kind of adapted, viewed that, and what some of those struggles looked like, and then what you did to overcome some of those pieces.
Sure. So I actually, career-wise, I went on my maternity leave, and I had just completed my hours. And what that means in my field is, once you complete your hours, you basically apply for licensure, and you have to take a board exam. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought, hey, I'm on maternity leave. I'm already taking the time off. Let me just take this board exam now and study for it. And, you know, I'm thankful that everyone was supportive, but I wish someone said, hey, maybe you shouldn't. And I was breastfeeding and studying for this board exam. And I definitely was feeling symptoms of postpartum depression. And, it was really difficult for me. My son was not particularly calm. His temperament wasn't calm. He was fussy, and, it was really difficult trying to study, even though everyone was helping me out. My in laws were a big support. My parents were a big support. My husband was a big support. I had the village. But still, it was just internally very difficult. And then around 6 months postpartum, I I had weaned breastfeeding, and I decided, I was just really miserable doing it. And he was very fussy at breast, so I ended up pumping, which I think is like a whole job in itself. So you have to wash the parts, and you have to still feed, and still just all the things, right? So it was a very difficult journey. And I worked with an amazing lactation consultant who is like my friend now, and I refer to her, and she was such a great support and really like a big part of my journey, really. And I talked to my therapist also while I was going through all of this. So I had all the support. 6 months postpartum, after I weaned, I actually, after I weaned, I was like, okay, my life is going to be back in order. I'm going to feel so much better because this was just so hard for me. And interestingly enough, I actually got more depressed, and I was exhausted. And again, it didn't make sense because I stopped doing this job, right, of breastfeeding. So technically I should have more energy. I gained weight. I couldn't lose the weight. So all these symptoms started coming up. And I remember somewhere in pregnancy, I read that it's important to check your hormones. So I remember that. And I called my OBGYN. And at first, she kind of dismissed everything and said, you're a new mom. It's normal for you to be tired. It's normal for these things to happen. I don't think anything's wrong. And I said, please, let's just check my blood work. I feel that something is off. And sure enough, I had hypothyroidism. She called me saying my thyroid was almost non-functioning. And I had to be put on medication to manage that. And, since then, that's when I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. That's when things shifted for me, truthfully. Who knows how long that was happening, obviously. But that was my journey.
That's wow. Like being able to advocate for yourself, I think again, we're so used to hearing, a doctor say, well, this is it. And then, okay, you're the professional, but that's amazing that you were able to trust and know your body and say, hey, something isn't right. And again, I'm a huge proponent with all moms of trust your body. And if you don't like the answer you get the first time, ask again, and it's okay. It's your body and you're the one that has to live in it. And so we want, you to feel the best that you possibly can. So once you got that figured out, how did taking care of yourself change? How have things been since then?
It's been a journey for sure. I'm now 4.5 years into motherhood, and I feel the best I've felt yet in every aspect of my life. I feel like I'm at I've gotten parts of myself back. I feel confident as a parent. In my career, I feel like I have a lot of passion. And of course, doing this work it's a result of everything I went through, right? And it's just been a lot of, my body, I feel like went through a lot. I later also got diagnosed with PCOS. So there's some hormonal stuff happening. So it took a toll on my body, to say the least. But, it's interesting because it also gave me so much perspective of there are so many women, and, anxiety and depression are part of these hormonal disorders, and they are a symptom. And so many women experience these things and don't have the answers. And I'm a big advocate in getting these things medically ruled out when we start therapy, because it could be the answer to many things. Right. Sure, motherhood is hard. Sure, there could be things that happen that we need to work on in therapy. There always is. But to feel an extreme low and then find out it's a hormonal issue and then have that be fixed, it's such a game changer in how we approach this.
Yes, absolutely. I have like goosebumps. So this has been fantastic so far. This conversation has really resonated with me and hopefully with all of the listeners out there, also resonating with them. We are not done yet. We're going to come back on, hear a little bit more about you and what it, really dive into what it is that you do with moms, dads, partners day in and day out. We're going to take a quick break. So don't leave, stay with us. And there's some more that we're going to explore. Welcome back to Preggy Pals. We have Guyana here with us still. And Guyana, I'm interested. We've talked about getting pregnant, what couples can kind of do. Explain to me, I guess maybe a synopsis of what it is that you can do from conception with families all the way through birth of a baby. What can families expect?
If I'm working with a couple, we'll really analyze what their cycle is like, meaning their communication cycle and stuff,
Okay.
right? How do they communicate now? What are the culprits? What are the struggles and challenges they're having? Oftentimes, I'll use the Fair Play deck of cards. It's based on a book called Fair Play, and it's all about the division of labor between partners. And each card out of the deck has different responsibilities. And so we'll literally lay all of that out and we'll go through what the reality is like now, what their division of labor looks like now, and talk about, what each partner can do once baby's here. So that's kind of one of the first exercises we do. I teach couples assertive communication. So we'll role play what that sounds like. I'll teach couples how to talk about difficult conversations, difficult topics. We'll go through what their needs are, because oftentimes people don't know what they need from each other. And then we'll come up with some sort of like a game plan of date nights and things they can do to connect, like rituals of connection. What can they do at home to make each other feel connected? Those are just some of the things we work on in couples therapy, but a big one is also working through the fears, through the worries that they have about this transition, and making sure that they know ways to find the way back to each other. I had a couple, that I had them write Post-its and put it around the house on the first week that the baby was born, and to say things like, it's not personal. I still love you. You're the best. You're doing a good job. Like little affirmations. And they put that around the house just to remind each other that, it's going to be hard, but we are on the same team.
Mm-hmm. Foundational, just like making sure you have that foundation moving into like the next phase.
Yes.
And then can people come to you when they're pregnant and then after they have their baby, or what's the scope for that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, realistically, it's interesting. For couples therapy, I typically get the call either when they're pregnant or like a year into parenthood, because I think in that initial postpartum phase, I'm usually getting the calls for the moms. It's almost like there's no capacity to work on the relationship if you haven't started therapy beforehand, which is why I think it's important to start before, right? So you can have a place to go back to check in, to revisit some of the things you've worked on, rather than starting completely new and feeling like, you know what, couples therapy isn't something I have capacity for right now. So of course I get, calls throughout any phase of parenthood. And for moms, I typically get the call, 6 weeks postpartum when they've talked to their doctor, and typically their doctor recommends therapy because of how they're feeling. But again, I would love to start that journey beforehand, because I think in that phase, you want to go to someone that already knows you and takes time to learn about their background, and I'm happy that they come anyway during that phase. I'd rather have that than have them not take care of themselves for years and then start therapy. But I do want to change that up. And part of that is working with doctors to have these conversations and check-ins during pregnancy, not just postpartum.
No, absolutely. And I always think as many tools as I can put in my toolbox. So I don't always need a sledgehammer. I don't
Yes.
always need a drill, but it's going to be awful hard to break through a wall with a hammer versus a sledgehammer. Like if I can put those tools in there, I'm not going to use them every day, but I'd rather have them. And I think that that's definitely what you're offering families are those tools ahead of time where you don't need them right now, but you're going to need them. And it's a lot easier to pull them out of your toolbox in the moment than having to drive while you're sad and depressed and anxious and you have a new baby and you're lactating and you're also, postpartum and you're bleeding and all the things are happening. And now you're having to learn and acquire more tools on top of that. That's kind of overwhelming.
Absolutely.
So advice, if you could give a first-time mom advice heading into their third trimester or they're just getting ready to meet their baby, what advice would you give a first-time mom?
I think to really trust that every difficult phase will be temporary. It might feel like it's gonna, never end and that you're gonna be stuck in these really hard moments, but to really trust that, parenthood is filled with ups and downs, and to trust that, when you're in that low period, there's a kind of like a roller coaster, there's that high coming really soon and you will be in a better place. And so to really trust that each phase is temporary.
To add to that, I know you have a 4.5-year-old. I have a 3.5-year-old. So I never thought that I would ever miss not sleeping. And then I'm still up at 2 a.m, just to go in and check on my baby. And because she doesn't need me to put her to bed anymore. I got it, Mom. And I'm like, oh, can I just rock you for a little bit? And she's like, no, I've got it. Night. My mom heart breaks. But I never thought I would miss that. I never thought in that moment, I'm like, she's never going to sleep.
Yeah.
She's just going to be awake forever. And now I'm like, I would like just a little bit of that back where we got to spend those 2 o'clock feedings, just her and I, and that great bonding time. I miss those pieces. So you're 100% right that all the hard times don't last and you don't think you're going to miss them, but you may miss them down the road.
Yeah. It's bittersweet, right? The thought is bittersweet. It's both sad that it's a temporary moment, but also good in a way because it's not going to last forever.
Absolutely. So where can our listeners find you on your social medias, websites? How can they get in contact with you?
You can find me on my Instagram at Therapy with Guyana or on my website, therapywithguyana.com.
Perfect. So we will make sure that we link those in the show notes. And if they want to follow you on Instagram or your website, can they also work with you that way? Can they reach out and set up a time to work with you on using those same methods?
Yes, absolutely. Just send me a DM or send me an email, contact me through my website, and I'll get back to you and we can discuss further.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, this has been so fun. I have really enjoyed hearing about your journey and your story and how that really shaped who you are right now and how you're moving forward, helping new families move into their journey. And I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your expertise. For our listeners, make sure that you check out New Mommy Media. That's where this episode and all of our other episodes are going to be housed. You can look at the show notes to be able to follow Guyana. Plus videos and more will also be there. that wraps up our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you love Preggy Pals as much as we do, we'd love for you to check out the amazing businesses that sponsor our show every week. And don't forget to share this free resource with another new mama who might enjoy it. If you're looking for more content, be sure to check out our other podcasts like Newbies, Parent Savers, and The Boob Group, along with Twin Talks by visiting our website at newmommymedia.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at newmommymedia for updates, giveaways, and more. Thanks for joining us on Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.